Good morning and welcome to the Posturite webinar this morning. We are going to do things differently, which probably will mean that actually I will leave myself on unmute now for the rest of the session. But we've got Jason Chadwick with us today, and we're going to have a discussion on employee well-being. Please don't worry if you have any problems this morning, because we will be recording this webinar and it will be on our website afterwards in case of difficulties. I will be taking questions. I have my question box open, so please, if you have a question for Jason, type it into the box on the right-hand side of the screen, and then towards the end we will get to some of the questions and I will put them to Jason. Today, as I say, we're talking about well-being, and it was very interesting this morning. I got an email from the Stress Management Society, and they were talking about a survey that had been done by AXA, stating that 4 out of 5 adults are stressed each week, which I think is really quite concerning, as I'm sure you are all. And they're saying that 3 main factors are finance, work, and health, with 68% of us worried about our own waistlines, and 39% of us about our partner's waistlines. So, I think with that backdrop, we're all aware of these things. And their overall finding was to say that we do need some wellbeing programs, and they need to focus on these 3 key areas of work, finance, and health. And I just thought that was very pertinent to what we were talking about today. So enough of me, and now I need to pass you over to Jason, who he's a bit of a sporty, and obviously he studied sports science before coming into the well-being area, and he now does health and well-being for industry, and he's been doing that for the last 25 years. So I hope to pick up on his pick his brains this morning about that. So without further ado, I'm going to. I've got a little note actually. Just move your microphone just a little bit away from your face. There you go. Let's see if that works. I'm just saying that I can hear you breathing, so let's see where we go with that. So let's hear you talk rather than breathe, Jason. So start off, well-being is such a wide subject. It means lots of different things to different people. Now, what do you think well-being is?
Well, firstly, Catherine, thank you for having me today. You're absolutely right in that well-being can be seen as an umbrella term for many well-being topics. I think the term well-being is often to mean happiness. In fact, the Oxford Dictionary describes well-being as the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy. But if we look at applying this to the workplace, I believe well-being, well, it's a mix of initiatives, it's a mix of services to achieve, well, happiness in the workplace, in a sentence, and in the hope that we can develop and create great working environments that offers agile working, that offers support pillars to help change behaviors, where employees feel supported, and given education as well in order to hopefully take responsibility for their own health.
You talk a lot about happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that just something rather nice to be thinking about in work? Isn't that a bit pink and fluffy?
Yeah, pink and fluffy. I think that word was used by Dame Carol Black in her words a short while ago, in terms of, and I have to agree, I think the days of well-being, employee well-being, being seen as a fluffy extravagance are long behind us. I think organizations are seeing the benefits of what well-being initiatives can bring the organization. I think for many years we've identified that employees are seen to be the most valuable asset, but it's such an exciting time at the moment we're finding with our discussions with organizations, in that they really are now starting to sit up, more importantly invest in what they believe as well-being is within their organization. So yes, I get the point with the fluffiness, but I think it has a massive impact as it's well documented.
I think you're absolutely right, and in fact I suppose that survey that I spoke about to begin with probably just shows how pertinent it is, in the fact that it isn't pink and fluffy anymore, that people are recognising we need to do something. And actually that follows on to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was, in your experience, what do you think the greatest barriers are to people doing this? We've got this research telling us to do it. Why are people struggling?
I think organizations, I think, sometimes can feel apprehensive about introducing possibly something new, something that they might lack a little bit of knowledge in that particular area. Certainly when it comes to creating well-being programs, setting objectives, coming up with well-being strategies, or even creating data, if you like, on their employees in order for them to make the right choices going forward. And in creating that data, we've been told that there's a fear of opening up a can of worms, which is completely understandable. I think also with regard to the individual who has been given the role to promote well-being within the workplace, we've seen possibly a lack of knowledge in that area, no fault of the individual. So not necessarily somebody from a clinical background like Occ Health, but possibly from maybe a facilities position who have now been asked to pop on a well-being cap and to run with delivering a well-being program. So it's a question of finding out, well, what works, what doesn't work, where do you start is a common question, but also what well-being means to their organization and where does it sit within the company. We don't really want to see this as a ticking of the box exercise. We want companies to look at this as an investment in the future of well-being of its employees.
You talked a little bit about objectives there. Have you seen any companies do some objective measurements, something a little bit firmer perhaps than comfort? Have you seen any of that?
Sure, we've got one client in particular who work with a number of vendors, if you like, certainly Occ Health providers, absent management companies, and the impact on the initiatives over the years has had a positive impact on reducing the amount of days lost. So it's there in black and white. It makes us feel very happy that we are on the right lines. I think over the years we've built up some tremendous case studies, and it goes back to that meaning of well-being. You could get a subjective well-being question, which is simply asking somebody about their feelings. And even though it's very difficult to measure that on any profit and loss account, which I know that we're trying to build a case here in order to receive funding going forward, but we've got some great, as I mentioned, stories to back up the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that, all businesses are trying to be far more objective these days. And I think if it would make it clearer for companies if we're able to set objective well-being objectives to sit alongside all the other things they have to do.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear that you've got some history of that. We talked about partners and well-being initiatives. Do we think that wellness always has to come from the outside of an organisation? Is well-being done to people, or is it something that's more created? What's your thoughts on that?
I'd like to think it's created. It's not going to be delivered overnight. I think it takes thought, it takes planning. I think it takes an element of emotional intelligence as well in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what's the right thing to do for your organization. I know that there's a good number of organizations that we have talked to already who offer a wide range of services to its employees, and the common thread with that is they've come to the conclusion that they're just not communicating what they already do. And that could be in the shape of recognizing national campaigns, for example, invested in EAP services, on-site physio appointments, corporate gym membership, or simply they've got a walking club but nobody else knows about it. So it's that communication, I think, is a big tool, and something that lets a lot of organizations down. So they're already doing a lot as it is. But I think it's important that once it's communicated, that these services are being able to be tested and measured in some way as well, in order to show its effectiveness and to ensure that the resources are being allocated in the right areas. But in answer, yes, I think wellbeing initiatives, they are created. It's not just done. I believe that there has to be some work involved. Yes, some planning involved. It needs to be executed in order to create an engaging and effective but successful wellbeing program.
Yeah. I'm going to touch on something, I suppose, a little sensitive here. We're talking about well-being, a person's physical and mental health. There are people who say this is a personal issue and not a work issue. We've talked about the benefits to work, but are some people going to be uncomfortable that work is now intruding in their health?
I think it's a great discussion point, Catherine. Very interesting point as well. I think you're right. I think the impact on an individual's health can certainly have an impact on how they work, and vice versa. It can be seen that the impact of the job role can have an adverse effect on an employee's health. And we only have to look at stress and the sources of pressure together with musculoskeletal disorders. And these are the two main areas responsible for the greatest loss of days. So there is a point where I think where companies now are identifying this and looking at ways to reduce these costs. But keeping in mind that this isn't new for many companies out there. They've been reacting to this for some time, but I think certainly for companies who are looking to embark on introducing well-being into the workplace, it's certainly coming from a work perspective, because people spend so much time at work, and the fact that we spend so much of our time there, it can have a massive impact on both psychological and mental well-being.
Yes, I think I'd agree with that. Are you able to share any examples, perhaps, from where you've done some work where maybe some employees didn't want to engage to begin with?
Yes.
Obviously, nobody's going to be forced, or I hope nobody's going to be forced.
No.
And then actually found that they saw the benefits and then engaged. Have you got any examples that you can give, or
Yeah, I think it's when you say that it'd be great to force this upon people, we clearly can't. However, I think if it's communicated well, it's important that we target people who need to do something. It's clear that they might have some sort of health problem, health risk somewhere, but they feel uncomfortable in getting involved. So communication is a big thing. And using maybe health screening as an example, it needs to be confidential with the individual in order for them to feel comfortable, to be honest, to also encourage people to speak, to talk, certainly within the workplace, and to feel it's okay, confident to do so. And we've got some great stories of individuals who have been identified or who have been made aware of their numbers, if you like, whether or not that's blood pressure, whether or not that's cholesterol, basic tests that are linked to cardiovascular disease, and have gone on to make some little changes in their lifestyle. So when we go back and re-screen them through our drop-in clinics, we find that there's been an improvement, a drop in blood pressure, drop in cholesterol, HDL, LDL. And I think the health benefits from that and that confirmation that they're on the right lines, well, if you could bottle it up, Catherine, we'd be two very rich people, that feeling of well-being. So, yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, and I would imagine that once you have somebody who perhaps has been slightly anxious about it to engage and sees benefits, actually the news does spread, and actually it helps everybody, doesn't it? So
Yes.
no, I think it's a nice thing when one can get it. So that's sort of looking at the benefits for the individual. apart from sickness absence, do you think there are any other benefits to companies?
I think generally what I think kind of drives sort of like the well-being programs, there needs to be measures in place to monitor its effectiveness. And you're absolutely right with absent management records in order for you to compare whether or not these initiatives are going to be sort of like effective. But I think it's wellness activities on a whole, whether or not they're activity challenges, whether or not it's an introduction of maybe classes, whether or not it's communicating sort of like the EAP services in order for people to have support within the workplace, certainly when it comes to the sources of pressure, whether or not that's financial well-being, whether or not it's outside of work, might be caring for for an elderly parent, and or it could just be their own health. It could be common mental health problems as well, depression, anxiety as well. But I think in terms of the return on investment, I think it's the loyalty as well that shines through, certainly with the initiatives that we have delivered in the past. Yes, the reduction of days lost, fantastic, but that loyalty kind of promotes maybe a little bit of competitiveness as well, certainly with our activities, but also engagement. And when you start looking at presenteeism in the workplace, increased productivity, difficult to measure that on a profit and loss account, but certainly with getting in front of the individual or a small group or even the whole kind of workforce and engaging with as many people as we can. But I think it can also promote good communication of the other services that the organization is delivering already.
Yes, I think I would agree, and I think retention of talent is something that people are talking about now, and I think people are looking for this added value in their employer these days. Or certainly, I'm told that the youngsters, I can say that being the age I have, the youngsters today, I think that.
Yeah, and just cutting in on that, you're talking about the talent acquisition, sort of the recruitment of the best employees an organization is looking for. There's a stat of 83% of employees consider an employee's attitude to well-being within the workplace an important factor when applying for work. And we've just run a series of health screens for graduates recently, and they certainly stay with the company for maybe 2, 3, 4 years, but I know that the feedback based on that simple health initiatives was fantastic. And will they stay with that company? Well, the feedback has been very positive on that. Yeah.
Now, there's a lot in the media, and I myself bleat on more and more about the need to move more and how I love sit-stand working and things like that. People who know me will be so fed up with me saying that. I think it's simple. How can we give simple advice to people about how they can improve and get more activity into their lives?
Yeah, I think we've touched on it earlier in terms of finding that one well-being cap to fit everybody. As we all know, we employ people. People are individuals with individual kind of well-being needs and thoughts about their own health. So I'd like to think there's just a step before that I'd like to address, and that step would be, and probably the most engaging step would be to get individuals to benchmark their health. Well, where are they at the moment? I think armed with that knowledge, I think the choices then, the next steps become a lot clearer. Certainly with what initiatives then you would then run out as an organization. I think, again, turning back to the health screening, again, I think getting to know the numbers, I think it can confirm an individual's concern about their health, or it can give them peace of mind. And that's quite a powerful tool when people feel, hey, I'm okay, I'm not as bad as I thought. And the peace of mind, that sometimes is the awareness and the kickstart that some people need in change in behavior towards their own health. But there's simple advice, and I think it's important that any provider, given that opportunity with a one-to-one, would be to offer advice there and then in terms of people underestimate walking, for example. It's finding what suits that individual. Not everybody likes the gym. I think movement is the first thing. Raising of the heart rate is another objective. Working with kind of training ranges, simple tools to ensure people are getting the benefit out of their activity. Digging over the allotment, dig in the garden. It's great activity that raises the heart rate, but it needs to be consistent in order to gain the health benefits. I think these also, without butting in there, I think, you know, we all know about using the stairs, but why not look at introducing kind of like these little bite-sized sessions, whether or not that's dynamic stretches, whether or not it's just static stretches, you know, some mobility exercises. I think the Japanese are well known to do that before work, aren't they? But I think what this does, it just educates people in order for them to take this beyond work and include it in their lives outside of work.
No, I'd agree. Actually, it was very interesting. I was teaching this week, and I had the session after lunch, and they said, "Oh, we've got a little wellbeing activity before." They turned the lights off. We were in UV light, and we had these sticks, and we had 5 minutes doing some sort of jagging. It was brilliant, most unexpected. But again, it was just 5 minutes, raised the heart rate, and actually, now I'm sure the people I was talking to would have been engaged anyway, because I was just so interesting. But they were, I think, far more engaged than they would have been had I spoken to them directly after lunch. It was fascinating, really nice to see.
And that's all it takes, is a vehicle to be organised, an initiative to be organised, and I think you'll find people will jump on that vehicle and they'll find it fun, they'll find it engaging, and the benefits are massive. Yeah.
I've just got a question come in, so I thought I would actually raise it now, just to think.
Sure.
Got a question. They're talking that a lot of people's stress and anxiety isn't necessarily work related. Yeah. Do we think that employers are getting that? Do we think that they're understanding that they need to provide support not just for work-related issues? Yes, obviously that's the thing. But do you think they are realizing that actually supporting people with non-work-related issues is actually going to have a beneficial effect for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a case study where we scratched the surface of stress. It's a complex area, but then when you start delving into the sources of pressure, with one particular client, up to 40% of their 300 employees, the sources of pressure was outside of work. So I think certainly working with organizations, specialists who can look at delivering workshops linked to resilience, building resilience, not just within the workplace. I think it's, but outside of work. I think it's also speaking to professionals who can assist in the benefits of activity as well. I think that aerobic activity kind of underpins so much of what well-being is about. But I think it's also looking at the understanding that source of stress in order then to be able to offer the right advice, which is why I think having a mix of solutions with every subject out there is really important, because it goes back to this very difficult to have one cap that fits all. So that one-to-one kind of, whether or not it's stress assessing, whether or not it's part of a health screen process, I think that data will certainly help our colleagues out there to make the right decisions going forward and be able to provide the right services. But I think going back to the messages as well with the individual or the group or the workforce, it is about being aware so they can take responsibility for their health as well. Yes, we know that they spend a lot of time at work. I think we're seeing that people are working for longer as well, in terms of being at work for longer, not just in a day, but their life time as well. So I think it's coming up with ways to make people resilient within the workplace, yes, but not forgetting that the outside stress is important as well.
I think if you don't mind, I'll just add a few things there. I'm working with a couple of clients, and certainly I'm seeing them providing support as far as finance is
Yeah,
concerned, and childcare issues. So I'm beginning to see that there are a number of employers who are looking wider than work, and I am beginning to see that people are seeing their employees as a whole, and supporting them as a whole, as well
yeah,
as in the industry. So thank you for that question. I'm sorry for butting in on that one.
not at all.
Um, right. Just really want to ask, I mean, obviously health screening is something you feel passionate about. You've talked a little bit about it already, but why do you think it's so important for us to get health screened, and why is that going to make a difference to our lives?
I think it's just a great way of collating information, collating data on the employees, on the workforce. It is confidential. There has to be. I think we need to create an initiative where people feel comfortable to attend. It's educational. People get to know what their numbers mean. It allows companies to create data in order to deliver evidence-based solutions to help employees to remain productive, engaged, and fit for work. But it's seen as probably one of the most engaging parts of any wellbeing program. It's a great first step, I think, certainly for organizations who are looking to introduce wellbeing or a wellbeing program, develop a wellbeing program into their organization. I think it also complements organizations who already have something in place. I think then it helps help those people making those decisions to make those right decisions going forward and make good uses of resources as well. I think the feedback received as well from the individual is extremely positive. People generally wouldn't go and book a doctor's appointment unless they're having some sort of sign or symptom. And we know with the blood pressures, the cholesterol, they're known as without sounding too pessimistic, as the hidden killers. And I think it's that awareness that arms people with making the right choices going forward as an individual, but I think the organizations can certainly invest in the health screening in order for them to then create set objectives and then be able to develop strategies to meet those objectives.
No, I agree, and actually, I mean, I'm fortunate. I think, I mean, we have some genetic issues within our family,
Right.
and I know that's a slightly different type of screening, but I'm reassured that I get tested on a regular basis, and in fact, I probably know those tests far better than I do my cholesterol and my blood pressure and everything else, simply because I know that they are helping me have an early warning signs.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but
Yeah.
you're quite right; they get sent to me, and they get done, regularly. But actually, for me to go to my doctor to get my cholesterol and things
Yeah.
tested, I don't make the time for that. So
Sure.
I'm very lucky in the fact that we now have that offering
Yeah,
here.
and it's a convenient initiative. The employees aren't away from their desks for too long, and it's kind of so like engaging. But I think within that time, if anything is flagged up, certainly with our individual reports, we can we've been seen, or any provider for that matter, can offer advice there and then. So it's all well and good raising maybe a health issue, but it's what do we have in place to be able to deal with that, and that's an important.
Time is running away with us, and I'm afraid I think I've only got chance for one more question, Jason. So,
Okay.
but I actually think it's probably a fundamental one. We started off saying that well-being is complex, and we've sort of said that companies, want to help employees, but often don't know where to start. So, what would we say? What are the steps that if somebody's thinking, yes, I'd like to do well-being, I can see the benefits, but where do I start?
Yeah.
What advice are we going to give them, do you think?
I think initially try and collate as much information as you can. collate everything you consider as being a benefit for the employee. It's a good place to start. And try and collate it and bring it all together, and then analyze what you're already delivering. And is it being communicated? And I always find that even bringing it under a logo, a banner of some sort, so that people can identify it as being maybe about them. Um, uh, and um, and if you've collected data on your employees, and what I mean by that is maybe past employee surveys, employment engagement surveys. You may have got health screen reports from from a previous time, which will show the demographics of the health of your employees. Then it's this data, I think, that can help those responsible for delivering well-being to identify hotspots and trends, and allow you then to target the well-being initiatives going forward. But more importantly, make use of the resources that you have, but maybe even then plan for future investment as you develop your programs.
Yes, I've certainly often suggested sort of employee questionnaires. What are their concerns? What would they like to see? Because quite often things come up that you weren't expecting,
Yeah.
And you thought you were putting your investment in the risks and actually, that you thought, and actually find out that your employees are actually concerned about something different.
Sure.
And it is important, isn't it, to get the resources to make a difference, not just to be, as you said earlier, ticking the box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's another thing is to work with your colleagues, work with HR, which I'm sure is where the directive might have come from with regard to introducing well-being. Is there a well-being strategy already in place? Maybe look through your health and safety policies as well. And can this be used as a platform in order then to put the kind of like the flesh on the bones going forward? And if you're not sure, then don't be afraid to ask for help as well. I think that's a massive plus. There are companies out there who delighted to hear people's ideas, thoughts, but more importantly, maybe help with the resources in how to deliver that engaging program. Because at the end of the day, we've got to get the buy-in from the leadership teams as well.
I've got quite an important question just come through, and I think this probably relates to health screening.
Yeah.
What happens if a serious condition is discovered? I think, quite rightly, the person who's asking the question says, I think people are very concerned about that happening. I think both employers would be concerned that people aren't left hanging, but also individuals could be very concerned that they'd rather not scratch the surface. So maybe just quickly, if you could just say, what do you think most decent providers would do if that is the case?
Well, health screening is exactly that. It's a screening process. They shouldn't be diagnosing any condition, and I think the important thing, if anything is untoward, tremendously high blood pressure or high cholesterol, even when you look at glucose, diabetes, then the first protocol is a referral letter to the GP. And then obviously then keep that communication with the individual in order for them to ensure that the appropriate medication is given, advice is given, and then you can always then look towards any return to work policies depending on the severity of that.
Yes, I think, the questioner sort of says, they might be concerned that by raising the awareness to get more sickness absence, but actually if we identify these things early,
absolutely,
we actually probably are going to reduce the sickness absence. But like all good occupational health and actually health and safety, if you prevent problems, you don't know what you've prevented, so it's a very difficult thing to prove, isn't it?
And this is what this is all about, Catherine, really, is identifying at an early stage, because it will happen at some point where that person will be off sick. And appreciate it's a chicken and egg situation, but I think it's a very strong message to the employee as well, that the company has policies, has strategies in place in order to support them, not to almost say, all right, you're off sick, let's try and get you back to work as soon as possible. Let's try and get to that issue before it happens.
Right, well, I think we've pretty much run out of time. So thank you very much, Jason. And if anyone's got any further questions, please just do a bit of typing. And obviously, you can always contact us, and we can put you in touch with Jason as well. So thank you for listening. One just comment that's just come through is about occupational health, and I will answer for Jason on that. If the company has occupational
Mhm.
health, any well-being provider should be working with the occupational health. And yes, if a serious health condition, then obviously with consent, obviously we wouldn't be going without
Absolutely.
consent, needs
Absolutely.
to work with occupational health. And I think occupational health has a really strong role to play with working with any well-being initiatives.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, there are many companies who don't have access to
Yep.
that. So I'm afraid it's goodbye from both of us today. We don't have a webinar in December because we're too busy getting ready for Christmas. But I hope that you'll be able to join us in the new year, and we'll put our new schedule out on the website, and we'll be sending you details. So it's probably too early to say the old Happy Christmas, but I'll say it anyway. And I look forward to seeing you all or speaking to you all in the new year. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.